And we're live. Hello, YouTube. Welcome, welcome. I like that we're doing this on the regular more and more. I think it's a great place to chat about ideas, share ideas, answer questions. People have questions, and each individual person has different questions. And just literally being exposed to different questions in some regards gives answers, or at least they relate to one another in different ways. And that forms a big picture. And the big picture is what we need to understand. And the better we understand the big picture, the better positioned we are to make the best decisions possible. All right. So tonight's talk is about two topics, which I discuss quite often, but are always important to talk about as much as possible. One, crypto fundamentals. Two, the brand new, relatively hot topic of the search for yield. So, crypto fundamentals, that's my favorite. So, fundamental analysis. Let's start with traditional finance. Many have heard what I've said many a times that the fundamental analysis of equities is dead. It's useless. So, the fundamental analysis of equities is evaluating the price to earnings ratio, the price of a stock as compared to its earnings. And you could assess whether the equity is overvalued or undervalued, whether it's priced well or not. Now, obviously, any company operating at a 30 to 1 P/E is ridiculously overpriced. They are worth more than the amount of money they make. The fundamentals of the project are completely distorted, rendering the fundamental analysis useless and meaningless. It's absolutely ridiculous and pathetic, and I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Period. So that brings us to stuff. I'll skip the bonds and treasuries and stuff like that, but that has points to be made with regards to the search for yield. We'll get into that. So, crypto fundamentals, it's a whole different paradigm. There's no earnings. So, how do you assess what is a reasonable price? So, it's different, meaning that a reasonable price in many regards is consensus driven, supply and demand, which in so many regards it's much more honorable and meaningful fundamentals as compared to equities. So to start a fundamental analysis of a crypto project, you want to understand the technology at play. There's two types of fundamental technologies in crypto projects, UTXO or smart contracts. UTXO chains include Digibyte, um, Proof of Stake, Blocknet, Syscoin, StakeNet. The list goes on and on. Decred. You guys, I'm sure, have at least one other UTXO based project. So, what are UTXO projects? Bitcoin derivatives in almost all regards. Bitcoin is a UTXO project. An unspent transaction output is the fundamental component of the protocol. It's how transactions are uh, managed. I guess it's a component of the protocol, suffice it to say. So that's the two camps of cryptocurrency projects: UTXO, smart contract, and smart contract on what platform? Ethereum. Back in 2017, there was the whole hype of the Ethereum killer. Oh, yeah. When a floodgate opens and when critical mass, a critical threshold is achieved, the capacity to disrupt, an ongoing disruption, is almost awkward to conceive as being possible. Ethereum is an ongoing disruption. It is disrupting the concept of countless industries. And the same could be said about UTXO blockchains. But with regard to Ethereum, it is an ongoing disruption. So the Ethereum killer concept would involve disrupting an ongoing disruption. From a classical investment perspective, that would be like a company coming along and disrupting the crap out of Uber or Amazon. It's not going to happen. There is going to be no disruption of Ethereum. look at Lyft. There will be other companies like that do what Ethereum does. You got the Cardano and you got whatever, Stellar Lumens, and there's a bunch of others. They're not going to disrupt Ethereum. They will not be as big as Ethereum. Everyone is building on Ethereum, like it or not. You don't fight the river. You don't fight the trend. It is what is occurring. It's not a bad thing. Ethereum is brilliant. Every project has its incredible features and meaningful shortcomings. The shortcomings of Ethereum are well known. There are side chains. There are second layers, ZK rollup and Loopring. There are the new Ethereum improvement, EIPs proposals, and they are being rolled out. And there is Ethereum 2.0, which changes everything, potentially making Ethereum actually a deflationary crypto asset. So don't get hung up whether you like Ethereum or not. Realize that it has reached a critical threshold of consumption and momentum. Disruption of an ongoing disruption is not a rational thing to think that it's going to occur. So the fundamental analysis of a UTXO project is the protocol properties, the block timing, the hashing algorithms, the quantity of algorithms, and obviously the consensus mechanism, proof of stake versus proof of work. And my statement about the future is that all UTXO projects in most regards will be grouped in a basket because the fundamental usefulness of UTXO projects is data storage and asset management. Now, clearly there's projects that have somewhat of ancillary components. The blocknet has a masternode component, which they call a service node, which facilitates radically fascinating protocols, the XRouter protocol and the xCloud protocol. Syscoin has its Ethereum bridge, which is an interoperability protocol. These are profound technologies based on a UTXO blockchain. Now, Blocknet is proof of stake. It is an inflationary project. Syscoin is hybrid. It has masternodes and it has merge mining with Bitcoin. So it has proof of work component. Digibyte has proof of work, and it is a fixed supply. It is not inflationary. There's an emission rate until we get to a particular fixed supply, and there'll be complexities to consider as that period of time approaches. And no doubt, here's an interesting tidbit: if we get to 2035 and Digibyte has not changed, it will. Everything changes over time. It is inevitable, especially when it needs to. So when analyzing the fundamentals of the UTXO project, you want to understand max supply, current circulating supply, emission rates, block timing, consensus mechanism, proof of stake or proof of work, and you want to understand the targeted industry for disruption. You want to understand how much money, don't get me started, I don't like the word money, how much value is in the targeted industry for disruption, and third, the most important, how susceptible the target industry is to be disrupted. And that's your analysis of the UTXO project. Generally speaking, the UTXO projects are going to be much slower to appreciate in value. It's because the targeted industries for disruption are entrenched. But there's two things that are required for systemic change. One, the technology needs to work. Clearly, that's the case. We got 11 years of testnet with Bitcoin, as I like to call it, and was it 6 years, 7 years of Digibyte? Testnet, it works. I consider it all a testnet at this point until you have $1 trillion a month flowing through it. So And two, it needs to be profitable, or it needs to be fundamentally superior to the status quo of what companies are using. And that is the case. And at that point, adoption, consumption of these technologies is an inevitability. What's most important to consider when I say an inevitability is that I don't consider timeframes. I am not thinking of timeframes. Folks are always asking when appreciation is going to happen. I do not think like that. That is not the way my mind works. I think as a futurist in terms of whether something is an inevitability or not. An inevitability does not have a time frame. It is inevitable that blockchains will be used for data storage and asset management because they are distributed, redundant data storage systems with unique protocol properties, which is how companies will choose one UTXO project over another based on the protocol properties that best suits the project the company is trying to spend a couple of $1 billion on. Which this is exactly why I consider almost all these projects test nets. They prove it works because believe me, the second a company throws $1 billion at a project, these QT silly, Bitcoin fork wallets off the old school Bitcoin QT wallet, it's baby stuff. You throw $1 billion at one of these projects, you're going to have incredible amounts of software being created. And then when one company does it and they achieve millions of dollars in DevOps savings, another and another and another, it happens. And that's the way the sequence of events plays out with regard to technological inevitabilities. When a company shows that they could save a freaking fortune, it is a waterfall domino effect. So UTXO projects are going to take much longer than most people think to appreciate as much as they really wanted to appreciate. Hey, Patrick, Joey. Yes, my crew. Hit me up with some comments. Anyone, anything I'm talking about right now, if you have any thoughts or questions, or if you want me to digress. I love to digress. So now don't get me wrong. When I say an inevitability, and I think that the UTXO projects are going to take longer to appreciate than most want, that does not discount the possibility that they can, Patrick, they can appreciate in short order, meaning sooner than later, because you have complex dynamics that go into these markets, which is basically the supply and demand principles, the emission rate, and it gets even more fascinating when you start talking about these Ethereum smart contract projects, because there is no deflationary UTXO projects, but there's deflationary smart contract projects. So that's crazy. Let's dive into that then. So we're talking about smart contracts. We already talked about Ethereum being an ongoing disruption and the capacity for an ongoing disruption to be disrupted is kind of irrational to even start to think about. So what's going on in Ethereum? How do you do a fundamental analysis of a project? Sure. Every UTXO lover, everyone, including myself, of DigiByte, we're quite fervent or passionate about fixed supply and fair mining and emissions. So a UTXO project starts with an ICO, or not initial coin offering. So you have a mint. You're minting the ERC20s, and then you have a distribution of them. But this is what's going on nowadays. Is not like the ICOs of 2016, 17, or whatever. Those were just trivial. That was really like a public offering where it was like they're just distributing it and accepting value in exchange for these initial ERC20 tokens. And there was nothing to it. It was a shell, a house of cards. Nowadays, these projects that are being released are profound financial technology products that are absolutely fascinating. And we've seen, it's really starting with the comp, what I call IGO, initial governance offering. So it's not just a coin offering. These ERC20 mints that are coming out are utility. They provide a capacity to perform governance over the protocol in a relatively decentralized fashion, which I'm inclined to think that legal persons are going to be like, "Oh, what could you do? What could a legal person, what could the laws do? It's a utility token." And just because people are trading and valuing a utility, a governance token at these, the way ICO tokens were valued, it's not just a trivial token. The purpose of its creation was to facilitate decentralized governance. So, man, IGOs, I think that's the new rocket ship, and it's happening, and it already did. And what comp obviously is on fire. It went from $50 to like $250 in less than a week. That's crazy. But it's going to burn itself out, so be careful. It's a classic bubble. And this goes into why it's valued. It's valued because it's increasing in price, and it's increasing in price because people are receiving it in such quantity. It's just a feedback loop. It's a very classic bubble. How is it a bubble? Because people are lending on compound, and it, because of the price of comp, it is cheaper to borrow than it is to lend. So people are lending on compound, borrowing, which is a leveraged debt, using their lending as collateral. So they're getting interest on what they're lending, and they're using that as collateral to borrow, and then re-lending, which they're leveraging their debt to earn more comp. So the lending, let's say, earns 4%, and then the borrowing is 8%. But the comp that you get for lending at 4%, comp token, COMP, it puts the lending at like 15%, 20%. So it's cheaper to borrow than it is to lend. So when this whole dynamic changes, it's dynamic, meaning it's in flux. It's an actually ongoing changing balance of numbers and shit. It's going to tip in the other direction. It's an inevitability. Inevitable. And then the domino effect reverses and it cascades, which is not a bad thing. And this has happened with the bubbles of the equities markets. It happened in 08, 16. This is what happens. The leveraged debt has a cascading collapse. The difference is that when the cascading collapse occurs, these are all over collateralized positions. So there's no systemic risk to the lender. The risk is on the borrower. Whereas with the real equities markets and the bonds and the CDOs and CLOs and the mortgages, they're under collateralized. So when there's defaults and the cascading collapse happens, the lender, the bank, is screwed. Crypto, the system, the platform, the lending network is not screwed. The burden is on the borrower, but there was a risk and reward associated with their course of action. And now they have the burden that they have to deal with because they chose to take the risk after they evaluated the potential reward. So fundamentals, UTXO of smart contracts. The initial mint. Let's talk about Ren. So there was an initial mint. They had 1 billion tokens. They keep some of it. They distribute some of it. They raise a shitload of money. Yay, happy, joy, joy. So it's not the same thing as a UTXO project that has the fair mining practice where it starts at 0 and just starts to be distributed that way. I don't overwhelmingly necessarily see this initial mint as a bad process. It's different. Clearly, there's overwhelming merit to a fair mining distribution starting at 0, which is what Bitcoin and Digibyte and Litecoin did. So It's different. Doesn't mean one is better or worse than the other. This initial mint um, has a bad reputation, but when if you're talking about an actual project that has purpose and meaning and utility, does it really matter that it's different? And there's Kyber Network, Ren, synthetics, Loopring. These are profound technologies. And I would not even get hung up for a second on the initial mint and distribution. Um, then you want to look at how the token is managed. Is there an inflationary component? Can people mint new tokens? Is there a deflationary component? Are tokens burned? That is one thing that doesn't happen in UTXO land, a deflationary component. And holy crap, what's deflationary? Kyber network is deflationary. What happens with deflation? There's less supply. The supply is getting destroyed. If the demand stays the same, dare I say, increases, what's going to happen to the valuation of the token? It's going to appreciate. And that is exactly what is playing out with Kyber Network, as well as especially their new protocol upgrade that not only retains the deflationary component, but incentivizes the larger entities that provide liquidity and also provide an incentive to stake Kyber. So you have the deflationary component from the burn, but you also have an incentive to lock up Kyber to generate returns. What happens when you're locking up tokens? You're taking them off the market. So now that's an additional supply cut. So the new protocol upgrade for Kyber is going to substantially enhance the supply restriction on the circulating supply of the token. And what is Kyber doing right now? Just take a look at DeFiPulse.com. It is one of the most serious liquidity protocol projects, period. And they're positioning themselves to be a focal point for liquidity services, for liquidity access functionality to the system. And what is the system? The crypto space. Absolutely incredible. Synthetics did obviously initial mint. It's an Ethereum token, but Synthetics has a very complicated protocol, which is absolutely fascinating. I don't want to get too much into Synthetics because of how complicated it is, but suffice it to say, synthetic tokens, which are priced from Chainlink, which means they could literally be anything. You have S oil right now. SUSD is their stablecoin, and a stablecoin is quite interesting because it's collateralized by SNX, the synthetics token. So what you do is you go to Minter, Minter, what's their website? Mintr.synthetics.io. And what you do is you take your synthetics, you mint SUSD with it, their stablecoin, and the more SNX that's used to mint SUSD, the stabler the peg is for SUSD, and you get SUSD in return for staking your SNX. What do you get in exchange for that mint? You're locking up your SNX, so you're totally restricting the supply. And if you go on DeFiPulse.com, you'll see that the circulating supply on synthetics, something like 60 to 80% at any given time, is locked up. That is a completely restricted supply. That's incredible. So you're getting huge returns. So synthetics is inflationary. It's largely inflationary now during the initial stages of the protocol and project's evolution, and it's going to cap at about 2.5% inflation. I think it was in 2 years, 2023. So what do you get in return for staking SNX? You're getting about 40%, and you get it back in SNX and SUSD. But guess what? So when you stake your SNX, you're locking up your SNX. You can't do anything with it. You get your SUSD. So if you stake like $1,000, it's 7.5 to 1. So you're going to get 150 SUSD. You can do whatever you want with that SUSD. It's a debt position. You owe Synthetics that 150 USD that SUSD that they just gave you in order to regain access to your staked SNX that was used to mint the SUSD. So you better be safe, and this is risk reward. Don't take too much risk with that. Take your SUSD and do something smart with that. Now, there's SUSD pools on Curve, that FI. I've dabbled with those. Cool, sure, play around with it. The percentage yield is ridiculous. You could get like 30, 40% on your SUSD, and you're going to get another 20, 30% SNX, which is an incentivized component to the Curve liquidity pool. But there's one thing I don't like about those pools. They include Tether, USDT. I don't trust that shit for a second. I don't trust Tether for a second. They could be end up in a lawsuit in 5 seconds flat. You already know. You look on the news and you see that it's just risky, and I don't trust it. And I'm not going to mess around with the SUSD because that gives me access to my synthetics that has been minted and locked up. I will not jeopardize. I will not take the risk for the reward. So what did I do with minted SUSD? Drop it in on Aave, you're going to get 4 to 6%. So you get 40% on your NSX, FNX, and you get in 4 to 6% on the minted SUSD. I'd rather take the 4 to 6% on the SUSD than take the risk being involved with Tether for another 40%, 50% on the SUSD that was minted. Risk reward, always remember. You talk about not cutting yourself too thin with the projects you buy into. I am taking that advice and cutting down from 7 to 3. Okay, so this is about portfolio balance. If you have 10 projects and one of them goes 10x, you've spread too thin. So there's no particular thing I could say that could dictate what a person should do. All of the things I ever say are for sentiment. You have to gain an instinct, an insight into what feels right. And believe me, when it feels right, you'll know. You don't want to spread too thin. Right now I have a fair amount of Loopring, Ren, obviously. Those dark nodes are really cool. Kyber Network and Synthetics and Ethereum. I really wish. So I'm tempted always to have 0x. 0x is not deflationary, but they are a fixed supply. I like 0x. Bancor, I wish I had. But these boys, 0x isn't really like this. But Bancor is flying, but they had a security glitch the other day. But what's awesome about Bancor is that they have, hopefully, they say they've solved the impermanent loss issue. Well, not really an issue, aspect of liquidity pools. Talk about impermanent losses another time. But I don't own them. I don't own 0x nor Bancor because if I did, I would be spread too thin. I cannot own what I want to own. How about them apples? If you don't think I want to own 10,000 Link or however many Unibright tokens I could possibly own because they're going to take over the business sector, I cannot get the leverage, the size of the position I want with Link. Link, in order to be involved with Link, you gotta. It's huge right now. I mean, the people that are running nodes have millions of dollars worth of Link, and in order to compete with that, you need a huge position. And the reason I say this is because if you are investing in something, yeah, obviously the price appreciation of the asset is important, and that's why we get into the UTXO projects. But the recurring revenue stream is even more important. I've talked about this, but I would never be able to run a profitable Chainlink node to the degree, at least, that I would want to profit. So I cannot rationalize myself getting into Chainlink. It just does not compute, considering my thesis, my narrative, my desire for a recurring revenue stream. Sure, it's going to appreciate it. Chainlink is poised to be consumed by some of the biggest corporations around the world, but it doesn't if I bought into it, I wouldn't have the position I want, and I wouldn't be able to create the recurring revenue stream that I want. And Unibright, that thing's already up 2,000%. How the hell are you going to invest in something that's already up 2,000%? Fundamental analysis. You got to know the price it was. You got to know the price it is. And the fundamentals of Unibright are crazy. The companies that use it need to actually have it to participate in the network. So they got really great fundamentals. But I wouldn't be able to have the position I want, so I don't own it. Can't own what you want to own. Tether new brand of toilet, my man. How did you find out about Ren? Ren's been around a while. I think about 2 years. Republic Protocol is how they started, but they really got hot and it caught my attention as WBTC caught steam, and then TBTC started doing some announcements, and then I found that Ren makes both of them look like startup projects. The potential for Ren is sometimes I can't even put it into words. It has a capacity to tap the entire liquidity available in the Bitcoin network, 170 plus $1 billion. Because think about it like this: Bitcoin is just sitting. Why just have it sit? If you can earn a very safe, if you take your Bitcoin, wrap it, move it into Maker, have a 300% collateralized CDP. Let's say you take 10 Bitcoin, 300% collateralized. You're going to have about 3 Bitcoin worth of DAI, 3.33 Bitcoin worth of DAI. 33,000. You take that, you throw it into Aave for 2 to 4%. All of a sudden, bam, you're earning 2 to 4% on Bitcoin that was just sitting and doing nothing. This is what Ren is about to unleash, and this is exactly what happened yesterday with the massive inflow of value. I had been feeling that as well. I won't, but yes. I don't like to play with Tether. I don't trust Tether one bit, and I'm not messing around with a debt position. My SUSD, which is a debt position, I need to pay Synthetics that SUSD in order to regain control over my staked SNX. I will not take the risk. The reward is not worth it. That's why I picked up Ren. I hope to gradually build up to 100,000, and that you want to run a node. Man, yeah. Um, it's hard to give the best advice. I know that people want to run a node, and the only purpose to own Ren is to run a node. If you're accumulating Ren just to expect it to appreciate in value, sure, it's going to appreciate substantially, especially as the collateral, the amount of Ren that's used to collateralize the Bitcoin held inside the dark node network, and as we get out of mainnet sub-zero and to the actual mainnet one, it's inevitable. Um, that collateral balance, that's when this thing goes to the moon. Once we start seeing those algos start to work, it's going to be incredible. Josiah, whoa, my man, what's up? It'd be very cool to see DigiByte participating in the ecosystem more with. It's inevitable. It's inevitable, and just as I would expect any project to do, I'm sure they're thinking about how to accommodate UTXO projects in general. There's almost no difference between the most fundamental communication aspect of the protocol for all the DigiByte, the Bitcoin derivatives. The only difference between UTXO projects is the magic number and the DNS entry point to the network. The magic number is a prefix that goes before all commands, which helps distinguish between protocols, networks. So from in that regard, they're all the same, but the protocol properties are not, and that's what makes a lot of UTXO projects overwhelmingly special. 500 red. Oh my, 500,000. That's a heck of a position. I know a couple of folks that have a million. They run around with 10 dark nodes. You have to assess that for yourself. I cannot state what is a good position. What is the risk reward? How does the rest of your portfolio look? Is it balanced? What if Ren doesn't work? And that is a valid path. What happens if something happens? Never invest what you can't afford to lose. But holy crap, it gets more interesting because what do we have to lose? Are you getting up and going to work tomorrow? I'm pretty sure you're getting up and going to work tomorrow, no matter what. So that's why we are here. That's why folks are on this channel, because this is the only possible way ever to achieve financial freedom, is to take the value that you earn from working and actually do something fucking meaningful with it. And equities are off the table. Bonds and treasuries produce zero freaking yield. They're useless. Real estate, that takes a shitload of money. And gold and silver, you better own. And the crypto projects, and how do you approach them? You have to do the fundamental analysis. This was basically how we started this call. And risk reward profiles. If 500,000 is a good number, you are comfortable with it, then that's okay. That's a personal thing that everyone has to assess for themselves. Love my Digibyte. Patrick says yes. It's Digibyte. Digibyte is the premier UTXO project. The protocol properties make it the premier component of the basket of UTXO projects that I see companies consuming. It's the best choice. But don't discount other UTXO projects, particularly because when a company is going to spend $1 billion on a project, they're going to be like, all right, what are the tools? What are we going to choose from? And they're going to be like, here, 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 here. And they got 10 UTXO projects, and the engineers are going to sit down and go over the protocol properties and see which one is best for them. And that's like a menu. And that seems obvious to me, thinking as a developer. When I think of an API toolkit, GitHub projects that I need to achieve a solution, there's choices and options, different variations and implementations. And this just seems obvious to myself, thinking from a professional standpoint. What about, are you comfy? I'm always comfy. I'm always comfy. Thoughts about the new SBTC curve pool? It's lovely. So the SBTC curve pool includes SBTC, WBTC, and Ren BTC. There is no impermanent loss because each one of those components has equivalent valuation. The same thing for the Ren BTC, WBTC pool, except the SBTC pool has incentives, which is an SNX, a Ren, and BAL incentive. It's the most ridiculous pool available right now. And I think it makes trying to figure out leverage debt to earn comp seem stupid. Uh, don't chase the bubble. Rentards assemble. PCB3 and the port. Yes. Yeah, fine. The port, but the port is more so. Each node, you define the port, and you're telling the network what port to connect to the node on. So I'm pretty sure we each node could set whatever port they want. And maybe I could be corrected on that. I have to think about that one, but I think that's the case in some regards. We could talk about that again. I'm not 100% about everything. Big ideas, puzzle pieces. That's what I'm good at. Attempting to get that 1 mil for 10 dark nose, Alan Rose. Fine. I mean, if you're cool with that, if that's the allocation or capital availability that you're working with, shit. Could you imagine? Listen, a dark node is up to is paying itself right now. As of today, it's paying, each one's paying like 30 something bucks a month. So boom, 10. You're making 300 bucks already, and the network's 1 month out of the gate. But could you imagine if so? The number was like if the dark node quantity remains comparable to what it is today. If there was $1 billion flowing through the network a month, it's 1,500 a month. So 10 dark nodes, and you're making 15 grand a month. And look, $1 billion a month, and you're talking about Bitcoin having $170 billion cap, and then you got how many other UTXO projects? It's got to be another $30 billion. Oh no, just go on CoinGecko and you can see how much equity value is in the UTXO projects. And each and every dollar of that equity value, mint a damn tokenized representation of it and earn some DeFi yield. That's about to what's happened over this couple of months. I even think it's going to be another year before it's going to be relatively trivial to mint an ERC20 tokenized representation of any UTXO asset. And I need more clarity on the way Syscoin works because I don't understand it as much as I should. I believe the Sys Ethereum bridge has potential that I don't understand that I should. Could do more than I currently uh, know of. I've never been more so certain of Ren reaching $1 billion market cap. That being said, I feel safer having majority of BTC. And yes, well, I firmly believe, just like gold and silver, you want the largest chunk of your position to be in Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're the fundamentals, the basics. I actually lump Digibyte along with Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's a fundamental basic component of the crypto space. So you want it, for myself, you want a healthy position. I don't expect it to overwhelmingly appreciate, but in the short term, well, what did I just say at the beginning of the video? It is inevitable. And when I say inevitable, my brain thinks not in time frames. I don't care about a time frame. I have an asset that at some point in the future will appreciate because it will be consumed for very profound reasons and business purposes. It will be profitable to use Digibyte for what it's capable of. So in that regard, I don't care what the price is. I hold a position and I don't look at the price. The shit that's going on, like the crazy numbers on a daily basis, sure, that stuff catches my eye. And right now that's DeFi and that's hot. It's just on fire because it's leveraged debt. And as I've said in other videos, the leveraged debt is what has caused the wealth of the last 50 years after the US came off the gold standard. Using debt to collateralize debt, to collateralize debt, to collateralize debt, it creates this expansion. Incredible. And that is about to be what's unfolding in crypto land. By the way, so try to pick your brain with a Q on your phone. Huh? DGB eCaggle, yes, is trying to pick my brains with a Q. What's a Q on my phone? Alan Watts, why not open a make of all this 0% and use your ethics collateral to borrow USD? Yes. Oh my God. Well, but bear in mind, oh goodness. So now you're have 0% APR leverage debt. You're creating a collateralized debt position with Maker. There's very little risk if you over collateralize the CDP substantially. If you're going to put a fair amount of money into Maker and you collateralize it like 380, 400%, and your liquidation value is like $80 for an Ethereum. Or dare I say you do it even more, $60 for an Ethereum token is the liquidation threshold. Your risk is seriously minimized because the price of Ethereum would need to drop to $60 for your position to be liquidated. This is risk reward. You have to analyze the risk versus the reward. Who has? Oh, on my phone? No, I can't look at my phone. Who's hitting me up on my phone? All right, Josiah, what do we got? Oh, what are your thoughts on Digibyte? No, hell no, for the love of God. What are your thoughts on Digibyte embracing POS? Do you see it adding value? It's a good question. I'm happy to talk about it. I would love to see. I don't think Digibyte, Bitcoin, or Ethereum need to change a damn thing. I think they need to continue soft upgrades. Do not jeopardize the current network. It doesn't need to be at this point. The integrity is there. soft upgrades and throw on some second layers and figure out how to fancy marketing, lightning network, digibyte, and then that'll be whatever, hot for 5 minutes on Twitter. But we don't need to jeopardize the integrity of the protocol to catch people's fancy, because what is currently functional changes everything for the legacy financial system, the legacy data management, asset management system. They could literally fix the social security system using digibyte now, today. And all the government needs to do is throw up a bunch of proof of work mining rigs to ultimately secure the network. And then what happens? Another country around the world says, oh, look what the US is doing. So they throw up another couple of $100 million worth of mining rigs to secure the network. And now their system, their social security or identification system, you see, once one company or country gets involved and they throw around hundreds of millions of billions of dollars, everything changes. Don't jeopardize the network, please. That's my opinion. And bear in mind, look, F 2.0, the protocol upgrade that they want to do is absolutely ridiculous. Why? Because it's going to be a deflationary asset, and that's crazy. So Digibyte is not inflationary. It's a fixed supply. It's a cap supply, albeit there's an emission rate, but Ethereum will be deflationary. What happens with deflation? The value of the asset explodes. So that's just crazy. Um, Significant crypto positions should be in custody. Too many attack, but hell no. Custody? Yeah, I'll show you custody. It's called a ledger. That's your custody. Just my 2 cents. Albeit then it gets complicated, particularly with regard to like institutions that are managing hundreds of millions or 50 billion, 100 billion. So it gets complicated. And this is where those professional custody implementations come in, Coinbase, Gemini, and the big boys. Fine. Clearly, a pension fund with a $500 billion isn't going to manage their shit on a ledger. So you got me there. Do you think Syscoin has missed the mark with lack of presence in DeFi? I think Sys could potentially pop. I don't. I don't. Some this I put Sys and BlockNet in the same category. Like, it is so unfortunate that they are not on fire. Um, I think that they're so close. I mean, Sys is literally hitting the interoperability component, and BlockNet totally has the capacity to hit the Oracle and what I call liquidity network component. They're so freaking close to UTXO fire, and it's kind of, I feel bad. It's just they really deserve it. That the projects are profound. The technology and software that they built is meaningful, very meaningful. All hacks could be eliminated. What do you think about oracles? Well, now you're talking about Chainlink, teleattributes, and band protocol. Oracles, uh, business is going to eat them up, because this is how business gets on the blockchain, smart contract, Ethereum blockchain, because oracles pipe data into smart contracts. And this is how you could execute sequences of smart contracts with actual real world data, which is crazy. This makes the legacy system look pathetic. Have tokenized representation of real world assets using Digibyte, wrap that shit in an Ethereum wrapper, and throw it into 10 smart contracts to handle escrow, record keeping, data storage, asset management, and you can do it all there. But you have your asset, your physical real world asset, represented in an immutable representation on a distributed, redundant network that's spread around the world. Now, this is an interesting component of UTXO fundamental analysis: the node distribution, the geographical node distribution. And I guarantee you, when companies start to evaluate which product they want to use, they're going to want to assess where the nodes are spread around the world, because that's just meaningful. Um, I love your stream, Noah, my man. Yeah, learn the most over time. No, no one's the dumbest person in the room. Always follow the smartest person in the room, and I'm sure as hell following them. Real vision. Raoul Pal, Brent Johnson. Oh my goodness, smart people, real vision. I'll watch this 5 more times. Well, this is always here, and I look forward to doing more. And never ever hesitate to ask the same question again, and I will do the same video again, and I will do it again and again and again. And that's what I want to do with this channel. I'm going to put it on Twitter and be like, what's a question? And that's how we're going to do videos. Question and answer, question and answer. We're going to do it. But if there's 10 million USD on the ledger, would you feel safe? Yes. Purse might, yes. It's a 24 word seed, which is, I believe Josiah could probably, you know, Matthew can answer it better, but 24 word seed has a degree of quantum resistance. 12 word is susceptible, meaning you'll probably want to swap it out to a mnemonic that's 24. Why can't you listen? The second a quantum computer comes out, all they have to do is make 1,000 word seed, and clearly you're not going to remember it, but you're going to store it and encrypt the record of the seed phrase securely. But 1,000 word seed, come on, just take everything that exists today and scale this shit up and see where it's going to be. 1,000. Can you imagine the numbers, the actual number? The number of atoms in the universe is 10 to the 80, and crypto deals with 10 to the 160 right now. Can you imagine 10 to the million? 10 to the million to the million? That's the power of math. You could just keep going, especially as the computing power gets more powerful. What about Teller? So Teller is fascinating. I like it. I love it. Band is through the roof. Teller's through the roof. Here's the problem with Teller. For me, from a recurring revenue stream perspective, I'd want to run a node. You know how much it is to run a node? You need something like 15 grand worth of Teller, and you need to have GPU mining equipment. I'm priced out. I can't be involved. It is a project that I want to own that I do not own because I cannot do what I want to do. I cannot own something I want to own. And that is my position. And I have to live with that. And that's okay. Always remember that. You can't own everything you want to own. You will be spread too thin. Yeah, the reduction in the mining reward from every year. The block time is going to decrease. Yeah, it's nice protocol properties. And frankly, it's an oracle. Come on, these oracles are going to be gobbled up like candy for these corporations. Absolutely incredible. There's a pool, and Teller V2 will be launched soon with staking, I think. Hey, I'd rather get 5% somewhere else. Because if I'm going to operate a node, that's an actual fundamental strategic physical component of the network. You got to do it right. So staking, it just seems it's kind of like the chain link. Stake $1,000 in chain link, you're going to get nothing meaningful. APR, return on investment, ROI. I rather participate in liquidity pools. I rather lend and earn interest like that. I find that more palatable to how I am observing these markets. Anyway, we did not get into search for yield. I've discussed it. I believe I've talked yesterday about it, and frankly, that's the ongoing DeFi rocket ship that's going on, and the search for yield is ferocious. I don't. How long have we been on? It's 9:50. All right, it's been an hour. If you guys want, and I need everyone to want it, hit me up on Twitter and ask for the search for yield to be tomorrow's video. So tell me what you guys want, and I will talk about it. And I like that relationship, and that'll give me content that's actually shit that people want to hear. And I think that is a different approach to what other YouTube folks do. Most folks do videos, pre-recorded videos. It's kind of like they choose content, and a lot of it is brilliant. There's wonderful YouTube content. Love it. I love Chico's videos. Who doesn't love Chico's videos? His research and due diligence is impressive. His controversy with the other YouTube folks aside, but I agree with many of his points. But there's a lot of other YouTube folks that are really palatable I think their personalities are reasonable, and I think the information they provide is insightful, and I think they have good intentions. And then there's other YouTube folks I think are absolute idiots. That's another story. Celsius is cool. Celsius, BlockFi, Celsius. There's another one, Nuo, I believe. But they're centralized lending protocols, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a centralized protocol per se. Um, I like Celsius. Here's why: because their business model is the same thing as the decentralized protocols. They're over collateralized. So an over collateralized lending model, there's little to no risk to the system, the foundation of the business model, because in the case of default, the collateral is liquidated, or in case of price fluctuation, the collateral is liquidated, and it may be the case that more collateral needs to be added to regain access to the entirety of the collateralization, or other things like that. But that's basically what they're doing. So BlockFi and Celsius are fine. The only difference is, I happen to like managing assets using a decentralized protocol. Clearly, with a centralized protocol, they have a degree of responsibility, and they're over. But that's the same. It's over the algorithms. But it's the same thing with the centralized protocol. So there can be issues with the algorithms and the centralized protocols, just like there could be issues with the algorithms and the decentralized ones, which is exactly the issue we had the other day with Bancor. Um, I'm not too worried about events like that, and frankly, I find it cool that and interesting that they proactively white hat drain the accounts of folks that were susceptible to losses. I find that cool because that shows good intention, and these early stage protocols are profound. These are seriously profound, like world changing protocols, and they need to happen. They should not restrain themselves. Always be iterating is the software engineer's mantra. They need to move forward, and they need to do it now because the world needs it badly. So I like the pace at which they're doing things. Mistakes happen. They were ahead of it. They got ahead of it. They fixed the contract. They proactively drained accounts, and clearly they reimburse. They make everything whole because there's something honorable about these very prominent projects. They're not doing it just because it's a business. They're doing it because this shit is going to change the world. It is too obvious. They're building a financial system that makes the legacy system look pathetic. We are the bank. We are the lenders. You don't need these powerful, horrible organizations anymore. What do you think the SEC will do with compound yield farming? I don't think they can do anything about yield farming. I think the only thing that they could go after is the IGOs, the initial governance offering, as I've been calling it. But that gets into the legal complexities because it's not an ICO, it's not a security where it's uh, um, uh, a, a position, a portion of the organization. The very blanket statement of an IGO, clearly no one's using that. Using that terminology, is that these are governance tokens. They are not being distributed. There is no value to them. They are being distributed to decentralize the governance protocol. The general public is assigning value to it. So I think they can't do anything whatsoever. It is the people poking the goddamn holes in how rigid and ridiculous the legal and financial system is. It's just so frustrating what the boomers, is it the boomers? The boomers have built, and they're so stubborn, resistant to change, that they thought printing $6 trillion was the best course of action, and they couldn't come up with anything better. They couldn't. You put me in a room, and I would have come up with very interesting choices. They came up with print $6 trillion inflation when you got these protocols running around that are deflationary. How about you do something? So I get very frustrated when I think about it. Think about these the regulatory agencies, and how powerful these damn technologies are and how much they're going to change the world. The ones working are trying to fix the system. Yes, all these projects are trying to not fix the system. They're trying to provide an actual system that isn't horrible. Over collateralized debt is fine. The burden is on the borrower. There's no systemic risk. The banks are about to experience a solvency event because nobody is paying their loans. And the banks only took a 5% for the mortgage under collateralized debt. So when the debt position explodes, the bank bites the bullet. They're going to get obliterated. This does not happen with over collateralized positions. The borrower has their collateral liquidated to make the debt whole. So these boys in DeFi are doing it right. These governance tokens, comp is a bubble, and this is going to happen, and it's natural. But the burden is on the person using the debt, the leverage debt, to mine more comp. The burden is on them. It's not on the system. The explosion, the unwinding of the bubble does not destroy the system. So these people are building it right. So we have to wait and see what occurs with COMP. 2017 ICO has got a slap on the wrist when everyone said they would go to jail. Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's not even remotely comparable. There is an actual purpose to these tokens to decentralize the governance process, period. And that is the issuance. The issuance had nothing to do with money. There was no value assigned to them. The issuance is for distributed governance. The public assign the value. And if every single liquidity pool that's going to do this, Curve's doing it, Balancer Labs did it, they're all going to do it. It's worth a fortune because they are not selling the token. They are not setting the price. The general public setting the price means everything. That's the difference between now and 2017. Hey, Noah, glad I joined in time. Just a couple minutes left. Let's wrap it up. It's been about an hour. Nobody stays on for an hour. Um, Hit me up on Twitter, ask me a question, and I will do another video tomorrow. I love it. If I got shit to talk about, I'm going to talk about it. So give me stuff to talk about. Saturday night, thank you all for joining. I love this. Let's do more of it. You have a good one. Peace.